Well, today is Juneteenth, the day set aside to commemorate the end of U.S. slavery. Danielle Wiggins joins us now with a local perspective on what some are calling the country's second Independence Day. Danielle.
Yeah, that is correct, Dave. And on this day, 155 years ago, the last slaves in the U.S. were officially set free in Texas. I recently spoke to Tony Sias, president and CEO of Karamu House here in Cleveland. And as the leader of what's recognized as America's oldest Black producing theater, Sias shared with me why he believes it's important to celebrate Juneteenth.
It's the official acknowledgement that slavery was over in this country. It's a time when a culture of people who have continuously had barriers in front of them to know that 2.5 years after a law had been passed, that they had continuously been enslaved. So this is the seminal celebration of freedom of enslaved Africans in this country, which should be a national holiday in my opinion, and should be celebrated as if any other national holiday.
What are the best ways to celebrate Juneteenth?
Well, I do think that education has to be a part of it in terms of educating the community about what happened in that 2.5 year window, the importance of what happened after June 19th, 1865, and as well to come together to understand the African American culture, our historical trajectory from then to now, and to allow community as a whole to better understand who we are and our contributions to this country.
And speaking of incorporating education within Juneteenth celebrations, the Karamu House is preparing to debut its first ever streaming theatrical production, Freedom on Juneteenth. The 1-hour educational performance, in which Sias directed, will air tonight at 7 p.m. on Karamu's Facebook page and other streaming platforms. Then after the production, there will be a live 30-minute discussion, a panel discussion with local community leaders, really much about how people can get involved and really participate in the change that's going around in our country and in Northeast Ohio.
Yes, certainly. And Danielle, there's other events going on too, right?
Yeah, there are multiple events going on throughout Northeast Ohio to celebrate Juneteenth. I've tweeted out a link that we have on wkyc.com that really posts all the events that we have knowing of. And again, please let us know if you're doing a Juneteenth celebration. Tweet us at wkyc.com because we do want to know what's going on throughout our community.
Yeah, Danielle, I love the education and the information. That was an outstanding interview, so thanks for sharing that with us.